Hey everybody, Brandon and Kyle here at the Energy Strength Studio. We're going to be talking about shoulder flossing. Now, there's a lot of flossing type drills. A lot of them are common nerve floss drills. We're not necessarily going to be going through those today. This is going to be more of a drill for you to explore some of your end ranges of motion of shoulder internal rotation and shoulder external rotation. Now, this is really one of those drills that's just useful to toss in if you have any type of shoulder issues. I don't think it's super specific to any one thing, but it's really useful to get your shoulder moving through its entire range of motion within the set parameters that we have of this drill. Now, this drill is going to be an arm bar. We're going to walk through it right as Kyle's doing it. We would almost always prefer to use a kettlebell here. We have, what is this called, Kyle?
The Havoc.
The Havoc
Triad?
Triad. It kind of works because it's still offset. I feel like a dumbbell is a little bit more comfortable in this drill, but we're going to get Kyle set up sideline here, and this is going to be the very first position that we get him into. He needs to maintain a little bit of a brace, but really not that much. I just need him maintaining this position. What I can't have Kyle have is open himself up too much this way. Okay? We don't want him really opening up and looking up at the dumbbell almost through his chest. He can look at it, but we want to make sure that he's really stacked and has kind of neutral lines running from base of the or top of the pelvis and bottom of the rib cage. This drill now, we're going to load it with probably a 20 to 30 pound kettlebell. A dumbbell works okay, this works okay. Ultimately, any weight works okay. Having a little bit of an offset just feels a little bit better with this drill. Now, what we're going to do is do very controlled articulations across that joint capsule. Super, super important here, guys. You aren't just moving. This is going to be the number one fault that you'll do is just moving at the wrist. I can lock Kyle's shoulder in place, and he's going to seem like he's having a ton of range of motion, but his shoulder is actually not moving. So it's super important that we lock down wrist and elbow and don't let them move. They can move a little bit, but just minimize it. From here, we're going to get Kyle into a deep internal shoulder rotation. That should be scapular elevation on the backside. We're going to go deep shoulder external rotation, and that should be supported by scapular depression and slight retraction. You're always going to be in a little bit of retraction with this drill, and we're going to continue to floss through that. He's going into internal rotation as far as he can, and shoulder external rotation right at this tempo. Now you'll notice that I'm kind of assisting Kyle through this so he can really feel those positions, and I'm trying to ease him into a deeper position every time. If it hurts, definitely don't do it. If you feel a lot of clicking in the shoulder, don't do it, or just lighten the weight and go a little bit easier with it. But it's super important that we have a punch grip here, the hand's not relaxed, and the elbow stays locked out the entire time. Now, the way that you can progress this, I don't think Kyle's going to be able to progress it today, but we're going to make him suffer because it seems like a lot of you enjoy that on the Instagrams. If you were really mobile, or if you participated in a sport that required a huge amount of shoulder mobility and thoracic mobility, you can take this drill one step farther by trying to get towards your stomach. He's going, no, wait.
This would be the far end position, obviously, but my arm would be straight up in the air.
Yeah. Hold it with weight here, Kyle. We'll just show him. What we would have Kyle do then is twist torso and hips to the ground. Notice how Kyle's hips have just moved to the ground. That's because his torso, thoracic spine, shoulder is not mobile enough to do the progression here, so we won't necessarily push him towards it. But if you were and you needed a lot of shoulder mobility or thoracic rotation, we would absolutely have you push yourself to your chest on this drill, and your arm would essentially be behind you at that point. Not necessary to get the benefit out of it, but if you, like I said, someone who needs it, it can be a really useful progression. Anything you want to add there, Kyle, before we sign out?
That's the advanced part of the drill. Obviously, it can be a big benefit to start working through that. I don't know if you can tell the little difference, but my shoulder, when turned down, it was probably half the range of motion of articulation through the actual shoulder capsule as it was when I was in neutral position. So if you're tight like me, or it's the first time going through a far end range of motion like that, make sure you slow things down and control it. I personally don't like to look at it. I coach a lot of athletes not to look at the weight implement, dumbbell, kettlebell, wherever it is, because a lot of times they start over-rotating wrist and elbow versus shoulder. Brandon talked early about the feel. We want you to feel that shoulder capsule. It doesn't have the biggest range of motion. So if you don't have a partner that can grab and rotate your humerus, like Brandon did for me, just remember what you're trying to rotate is just the shoulder and not the entire arm, wrist, and hand as far as possible.
We would do these for probably 10 to 15 reps prior to training, and then get on to your pressing, rowing, or even squatting training. Brandon, Kyle out.